The billionaire heir to a divorce. Nicole and Eric's divorce. Before the divorce, Nicole was aggrieved and bullied by her husband and Wendy Quaid, among others. After the divorce, she returns to the family and sees a shift in her identity. Chapter 12 Payback. The guests looked at the trio strangely. Everyone knew about the Ferguson scandal, but the Fergusons were powerful, so no one dared to add fuel to the fire, and only watched the drama unfold. Is Eric's ex-wife not as innocent as she seems? Eric Ferguson frowned slightly and thought that Wendy Quaid was being rude. He was just about to go over and pry Wendy away when he saw Nicole turn around with a cold face. While the crowd was still dumbfounded, Nicole grabbed Wendy's arm and marched towards the pool. Wendy was like a helpless puppy that was being dragged by Nicole and did not even have a chance to retaliate. Nicole held Wendy's chin, then gave her a crisp slap across the face, which made Wendy scream in pain. After that, Nicole released her grip. Wendy then fell into the pool with a big splash. Wendy's scream stopped abruptly as she struggled in the water, shocked and humiliated. Nicole withdrew her hand. Her gaze was cold and sharp, and her tone was indifferent as she said, "Since you accused me of doing something I haven't done, I ought to live up to it. You can stop the act. I admit to what I've done now." Wendy was thrown into the pool under everyone's watchful gaze. Her reaction was very different from the first time when she jumped in herself. Thus, everyone began to be skeptical. Eric Ferguson also questioned what he saw at that moment. The Nicole in front of him seemed like a completely different person. The water in the pool was not very deep. Wendy saw that no one was going to save her, so she was about to climb up herself when she suddenly felt a cold liquid raining down on her head. The scent of the 1982 Lafite wine was strong as it dripped down Wendy's hair. Wendy's dignity was completely crushed as she looked up in fear. Nicole's eyes were cold and sullen with unbridled contempt as she poured half a glass of wine over Wendy's head. She was instantly in a much better mood. "This is an extra gift for you, Miss Quaid. Don't be in such a hurry to leave just yet. I still have another surprise for you." When Nicole left the scene, everyone looked at Wendy with disdain. How can a bad person act so righteous? One of them was calm and collected, while the other one was panic acting. Everyone could see that Wendy started this pretentious act. "Eric," Wendy's voice trembled as she carefully looked at the man. Wendy hated Nicole so much because Nicole stole Eric's attention and all the limelight away from her the moment she appeared. If it was not for Nicole, Wendy would not be in such a mess and would not become a laughingstock. Wendy admitted that she panicked. All she wanted now was to hurry up and leave because she did not know what other tricks Nicole had up her sleeve. Eric withdrew his gaze and called a waiter to help Wendy, who was shivering after falling twice into the water. "You fell in by yourself just now, right?" Eric's dark eyes were cold and gloomy. Wendy looked flustered. "Of course not. Why would I frame Nicole? Can't you see that she's crazy and just wants to get back at us? Eric, do you not trust me? Do you not believe in Hendrik?" Eric's gaze was deep as he scrutinized Wendy. His intimidating gaze made her tremble. "I'll send you back first." Wendy looked relieved and was just about to nod when someone shouted, "Look upstairs." Everyone's attention turned to the second floor, where Nicole was standing nonchalantly with a large crocodile leather suitcase in her hand. She was leaning against the railing with her arms bent and had a cigarette in hand. The wisps of smoke made her look so enchanting that the crowd could not move their eyes away. Wendy's heart shuddered, then watched as Nicole casually took out a stack of Benjamins from the bag next to her and threw it out insouciantly. Those crisp bills floated in the air and fell onto the ground and the water. Nicole continued throwing money by the handfuls. Many waiters and guests excitedly picked up the notes, and everyone was shocked by this scene. After a while, Nicole felt that it was not satisfying enough, so she took the bag and inverted it over the railing. Just like that, $25 million in cash eloquently rained down on the people below, including Eric Ferguson and Wendy Quaid. Chapter 13 Send Her Away. Eric Ferguson, "This is what you've paid me throughout the 3 years for my blood. Now that I've paid you back, we don't owe each other anymore." Nicole's voice was cold and resolute. Eric's eyes were dark and deep, and his mood at this moment was extraordinarily complicated. The crowd was clear about the situation at this moment. Earlier, Wendy Quaid labeled Nicole as a gold digger who clung to Eric for his money. But in the blink of an eye, Nicole slapped her in the face by returning everything Eric had ever given her. Wendy's reputation had gone down the drain with this incident. Nicole walked away glamorously, while Wendy was left with chattering teeth as she shivered in the cold. This woman is my nemesis, Wendy thought. Eric, Nicole must be mad at me again. Let's just go. Eric refused to let go of this opportunity to clear things up with Nicole and said to Wendy, "Wait for me at the entrance." After that, he went straight in and saw Nicole sitting on a deck chair, while the renowned Grant Stanton knelt by her side and rubbed her ankles that were slightly chafed by her high heels. Grant's gaze was so tender that Eric found it jarring. The two of them looked up at the unexpected guest. Grant Stanton smiled and sat calmly next to Nicole as he put an arm around her in a protective stance. "Mr. Ferguson, shouldn't you be comforting your companion? You're still in the mood to settle scores right now." Eric frowned. His body was exuding an extreme coldness, and his gaze was locked on Grant's hand that was wrapped around Nicole. His tone was frigid as he said, "Nicole, if I've done something to upset you, you can look for me to settle the score, but you should apologize for what you did to Wendy." Nicole hooked up her lips slightly and met his gaze. "What if I don't? Will you throw me into the water?" Eric was displeased by her blasé attitude. Seeing that she was so quick to be associated with other men, Eric also felt inexplicably vexed. "Since we used to be married, let me give you a word of advice. Be kind to others. Mr. Ferguson, I guess you don't know me very well. I was born evil." Eric choked. Nicole's stubbornness was especially infuriating to him. But since they were divorced, he was in no place to tell her what to do. His tone was cold as he spat out one word. "Fine." He then turned to leave. Eric was so exasperated that he forgot his purpose of coming to Nicole. He had wanted to explain to her about his relationship with Wendy, but there was no need for that anymore. Nicole's smile faded gradually. Grant patted her shoulder. "Lil-N, do you still like him? How's that possible?" Nicole sneered. She would not make the same mistake twice. In Eric Ferguson's car, Wendy Quaid was wrapped in his clothes. She was just about to explain what happened tonight to dispel Eric's doubts about her, when the driver exclaimed in surprise, Isn't that Ms. Quaid?" The driver slowly stopped on the side of the road and pointed to the huge digital billboard behind the Hilton Hotel. That advertising space that cost tens of millions of dollars per minute was looping the footage of Wendy and Nicole at the poolside earlier. Their faces had been censored, but the celebrities and dignitaries who went to the banquet knew the identity of these two women. Eric's eyes were fixated on the screen. It was a silent video, but it clearly showed that Nicole did not even touch Wendy. The latter just took a step back by herself, leaned back, and fell into the pool. In an instant, the air in the car became cold and stagnant. Eric's face was even colder. His eyes were stern and gloomy, because just a few minutes ago, he had gone to Nicole and asked her to apologize to Wendy. This was Nicole's reply to his request. Ridiculous, simply absurd. Wendy's face was pale, and she was trembling with extreme fear. She never would have imagined that someone would play the surveillance footage from the banquet on a digital billboard that could be seen by the entire city. Bang, the car door was slammed shut. Eric Ferguson stood outside the car. His tone was cold and stern, and his gaze was implacable. "I'll have someone send you to France first thing tomorrow morning." Chapter 14 Parachuted. Wendy Quaid pleaded in the car, but Eric Ferguson just felt like he had nowhere to vent his wrath. If this was fake, was anything ever real in the past 3 years? As Eric stormed away in the cold wind, a flashy sports car slowly stopped by the roadside. The person inside waved to him. "Bro, get in." Keith Ludwig was also at the banquet earlier to network and witnessed the spectacle. Since Eric left in a huff, Keith got bored and followed suit. He did not expect to see Eric walking by himself at the roadside. Eric sat in the passenger seat and lit a cigarette. When he saw the smoke, he thought of Nicole's figure when she held a cigarette earlier and stiffened. "Bro, you saw Nicole, right? What's her relationship with West City's Grant Stanton?" Keith's question annoyed Eric even more. Eric did not want to answer these questions that he did not even know the answer to. Fortunately, there were no reporters at the event. Otherwise, it would cause another viral sensation in their circle. With the Ferguson status, no one dared to spread rumors of what happened privately. We felt so sorry for you that Nicole married you back then with her shitty background. She's so rude to Wendy too. Luckily you got a divorce. Otherwise, the Fergusons' reputation will go down the drain. I don't know how a woman like that can catch Grant Stanton's attention. They even look much closer than she was with you back then. I never expected her to be so capable in this arena. With Eric's status, he should only marry a daughter of an affluent family. Nicole was just a gold digger that married into the Ferguson family for money, so none of Eric's friends liked her. Hearing Keith's frivolous words, Eric felt a trace of discomfort in his heart. Eric's eyes were covered with a layer of frost, and his eyes were deep and dark. Enough, stop talking. Keith pursed his lips. At least that woman knows better, and got a divorce. She'd better stay away from Eric. Eric was silent. His face was glum as he stubbed out the cigarette and threw it out the window. "Wanna go for a drink?" Keith proposed. Eric nodded. Sure. He desperately needed to get rid of the irritable feeling in his chest. After this little spectacle, Nicole became the star of the banquet. Grant Stanton also took the opportunity to formally introduce Nicole as the parachuted vice president in the company. For a while, there was more speculation about Nicole and Grant's relationship, but neither of them bothered to explain and only laughed it off. Nicole needed to get a strong foothold in the company before they announced her status as the company's successor. She must rely on her own ability first, so her network was most important. There was a lot of dissatisfaction within the company, but no one dared to object to Grant Stanton's decision. Grant even assigned his right-hand man, Logan, to be Nicole's secretary. Grant also set aside some time to give her extra lessons, so Nicole would stay in Grant's office for another 2 hours every day before they left work. Looking at Nicole, who was sitting leisurely in a rocking chair, Grant laughed and threatened her. "You're such a lazy bum. Why don't I get Dad to teach you personally next time?" Nicole immediately sat up. "Please don't. J&L's anniversary is in 2 days. They have a project to offer, so you can handle it." Nicole's eyes lit up. "Okay, I'll definitely get it in the bag." It's not that simple. Everyone knows this is a big slice of the cake, so it's not that easy to land this. I'll probably be abroad for a meeting during that time, but Kay should be back by then. Is he coming back? I'll pick him up. Nicole had not seen her third brother, Kai Stanton, in a long time. The last time she saw him was when she watched a TV show that he was starring in. Grant smiled helplessly and looked at the time. "Let's go. I'll take you to dinner." As soon as they entered the restaurant, Nicole's face sank. What a small world to be able to meet my enemies here. Quinn and Ingrid Ferguson were there. Where's the manager? Does this restaurant allow just any trash to waltz in? Ingrid yelled. Chapter 15. Pour wine. Ingrid Ferguson, who was gambling her money away in Germany on the other side of the Atlantic, was oblivious to the fact that news of her stealing her family's jewelry went viral back home. Her reputation was ruined. Once Ingrid returned to the States, the ladies in her elite circle looked at her with contempt. Moreover, the person who started all of this was Nicole, who they had kicked out of the Ferguson family. Now that Ingrid saw Nicole in this restaurant, she clenched her teeth in anger. In the past, Ingrid looked down on Nicole's unknown origins and walked all over her. When she saw Nicole again, she went to find the restaurant manager. The manager heard the commotion and rushed over. All guests who came to this restaurant had reservations, and were all influential people that he could not afford to offend. "Miss Ferguson, I'm really sorry." Ingrid glared at Nicole and wanted to slap her a few times to relieve her anger. "She's affecting my mood for dinner. Get her out of here, we're your VIP customers." The manager turned around and was shocked to see Grant Stanton's handsome face turn glum. The lady beside Grant Stanton had a faint smile on her face. She looked so beautiful and regal with her long wavy hair draped at her back. She had glimmering eyes and stunning features, and did not look the slightest bit affected by Ingrid Ferguson's outburst. The manager hurriedly went over and respectfully bowed to greet them. "Welcome, Mr. Stanton. Your table is ready. This way, please." Ingrid's face changed as she surveyed Grant Stanton. A trace of amazement flashed across her eyes, but when she saw that he was holding Nicole protectively, she frowned in dissatisfaction. Hey, did you not hear me? Get them out of here. Quinn sized up Nicole with disdain and echoed on the side. Yeah, she should take a look at herself in the mirror. How dare she come here? Nicole, do you think you can be arrogant with us after finding yourself a sugar daddy? A woman who's kicked out of the Ferguson family doesn't have the right to show up here. Grant sneered. His oppressive aura was overwhelming. Kicked out of the Ferguson family? Your ability to twist a story is pretty impressive. When did the Fergusons become so shameless? He was furious and wondered what kind of life Nicole had when she was staying with the Fergusons. Quinn froze. Her face turned red with anger as she looked at the manager and ordered, "What are you still doing standing here? I don't want to see them." The manager's face sank. He spoke decisively. "Mrs. Ferguson, Miss Ferguson, Mr. Stanton is a major shareholder of our restaurant, so if you don't want to see them, you may leave." Quinn and Ingrid were stupefied, and their expressions kept changing. Nicole chuckled. Her gaze was clear and indifferent. Nicole turned to Grant. "Ignore them. It's just a meal, so there's no need for this impasse. I have something to say to the two of them, so you can go in and wait for me." Grant looked indignant, but when he thought about the fact that Nicole was a changed woman, he felt reassured that she could deal with this situation. With a slight nod, Grant turned and walked in. He was astonishingly obedient. The remaining Quinn and Ingrid were not afraid of Nicole. Ingrid sat there and snorted coldly. "At least you're still self-aware. Our family won't care who's your new sugar daddy. My brother has never once fancied you, so I can make you vanish from Atlanta in a minute." Nicole looked down and smiled. Her eyes were indifferent. "Then what do you want? How about this, pour me a glass of wine and apologize? I'm sure you're used to serving others like this. Didn't you do this often when you were staying with us? I'll let you off the hook this once if you serve me well." Ingrid raised her eyebrows and snorted coldly as she waited for Nicole to bow to her and admit her mistake. Nicole laughed, went up to pick up the decanter, then skillfully poured out a glass of wine and handed it over. Ingrid hooked her lips in disdain. Before her hand could touch the wine glass, she felt a chill over her head. Every drop of wine in the glass that Nicole was holding spilled on Ingrid's head. Before Ingrid had time to scream or stand up, Nicole pressed her down on the shoulders. Nicole shoved Ingrid and said close to her ear, "Miss Ferguson, remember this. I was the one who brought up the divorce. I'm the one that doesn't want anything to do with your family. If you dare bend the truth, I'll show you which one of us will vanish from Atlanta." Chapter 16, Chance Encounter. Nicole walked away in style. Ingrid's face was pale, and before she could react, Quinn cursed loudly on the side and told the waiter to clean up the mess. "Is this bitch Nicole crazy? How dare she do this to you?" Quinn spoke viciously. In the blink of an eye, Nicole had already been led by the manager to the VIP room on the other side of the restaurant. Ingrid's hair and clothes were soaked through with red wine. She looked wretched. When she returned to her senses, she was so infuriated that she wanted to go after Nicole to settle the score, but she was stopped by the waiter. "Miss, do you need a change of clothes?" The surrounding patrons stared at the miserable-looking Ingrid, who stomped her foot indignantly. "I won't let her get away with this." Grant Stanton was in a bad mood after that encounter, but Nicole was not affected in any way. She looked up at Grant and smiled. "Gee, I have a shopping date with Yvette later. Do you want to join us?" The man gave her a sidelong glance, and his tone was cold. "How are you still in the mood for dinner and shopping? Look at the Fergusons' attitude towards you, they're so condescending." Nicole looked down and smiled helplessly. A hint of coldness flashed across her eyes. "It doesn't matter. You don't have to take it to heart. It's over anyway. They won't mess with me anymore. Even if they do, I'm certainly no longer the pushover that will let them do as they please." After dinner, they saw Eric Ferguson's car as soon as they came out of the restaurant. Ingrid, who was sitting in the car, quickly pulled Eric out the first moment she saw Nicole. She cried and complained, "Brother, she did this. I was so humiliated just now because of this bitch. Mom can attest to it." Nicole stood there with cold eyes and walked away holding Grant's hand, ignoring the Fergusons. Eric's face was gloomy. He did not believe that Nicole would become so mean. When he thought about Wendy's false accusation against her, he was afraid of causing another misunderstanding and waited for Nicole to come over to explain herself. But she did not even look at him and left. When they walked by Eric, He clasped Nicole's arm and looked at her with a frigid face. "Nicole, you should give us an explanation for what happened just now." Nicole faintly raised her eyes to look at him and snorted lightly. "I did it. What's there to explain?" She then lifted her leg to leave like she was not at all concerned by this matter. Nicole also did not care about Eric's attitude. Eric's grip tightened, which made Nicole feel uncomfortable. She turned to look at him with her beautiful eyes that permeated a chill. "Mr. Ferguson, are you trying to settle the score for her?" "Brother, don't let her go. This bitch dares to treat me like this. So you can't spare her so easily." Ingrid Ferguson, who had been pampered and coddled by her family since young, had never been insulted like this before. So naturally, she refused to give up. Eric's eyes darkened slightly and frowned at his sister. "What do you want then?" Ingrid hooked her lips and looked at Nicole smugly. "I'll let her go if she bows and apologizes to me." "You want me to apologize?" Nicole sneered and looked at Eric. I guess he has the same idea. Every time Ingrid or Quinn stirred up trouble in the past, Nicole would apologize for it and would sweep the matter under the rug. But this time, Nicole did not want to condone their transgressions. "Mr. Ferguson, do you also want me to apologize?" It's best to check the surveillance footage at the restaurant to figure out the cause of the matter before jumping to conclusions. Miss Ferguson isn't some innocent victim, so why the self-pity? Nicole's words were sarcastic. She shrugged Eric's hand off of her and took Grant's arm. Grant could not bear to see this and spoke up in an icy tone. "Hasn't anyone in the Ferguson family ever taught Miss Ferguson that it's natural for others to retaliate against bullying? Why didn't Miss Ferguson think to apologize to Nicole when she was being rude?" Ingrid's heart trembled when Grant glared at her. She felt guilty and flustered, so she hid behind Eric, looking pitiful. "Brother, I didn't." Grant and Nicole looked at Ingrid with cold eyes. Eric heard this and frowned slightly. "That's because she exposed me online for stealing Daydream, and my friends made fun of me for it. That's my family's jewelry. So how is it stealing? I only said a few words to her. But she even dared to do this to me." Ingrid sheepishly tried to defend herself. That incident made Ingrid lose her pride. Eric's face was gloomy and his gaze was inscrutable. He furrowed his brow and wanted to speak. However, Nicole laughed lightly and ignored Ingrid's rebuttal. Not retaliating when being accused was something the old Nicole would do. "Miss Ferguson, you should learn how to respect others. Otherwise, this will surely happen again." Grant added, "The restaurant's surveillance footage will always be available. Mr. Ferguson, you can view it at your convenience. Goodbye." After that, Grant led Nicole to the car and thoughtfully opened the car door for her. Their car drove out of sight. Chapter 17 Coincidence. Eric Ferguson watched as Grant Stanton's car gradually drove away with narrowed eyes and a sullen expression. The divorced Nicole was like a derailed train. He simply could not figure out which direction she was heading. In the past, Nicole would be very cautious around him, but now, she even dared to say those ungracious words fearlessly. Ingrid was reluctant to let Nicole get away so easily and wanted to stop their car, but Eric yanked her back. "That's enough. Brother, how can you side with an outsider? Nicole bullying me is the same as disrespecting our family. That ungrateful bitch forgot who fed, clothed, and accommodated her these past 3 years. She needs to be taught a lesson." Ingrid Ferguson, the jewelry in the safe at Imperial Gardens are all for Nicole. "Why did you take them without permission?" Eric reminded her. Although he had not taken the initiative to give it to Nicole, everything at the Imperial Gardens belonged to him and Nicole. "Brother, I'm your sister, it's just a piece of jewelry. So why are you being so calculative? Besides, Nicole doesn't have any occasion that she could wear such expensive jewelry, so why can't I take it?" Ingrid spoke with discontent and thought that Nicole was not worthy of the Daydream necklace. Eric really wanted to teach his sister a lesson, but Ingrid began to cry aggrievedly, so he did not know what to say for a moment. "I'll watch the surveillance footage first." This made Ingrid freeze in place. She stopped crying and gritted her teeth in indignation. "Brother, do you not believe me? Nicole clearly framed me. We'll know once we see it." Eric cast a sidelong glance at his sister and walked into the restaurant. A trace of panic crossed Ingrid's face, but she bit the bullet and followed Eric. "Brother, I told you that she's not a good woman. Look at the man next to her. He's so protective and fond of her. So maybe she's already cheated on you long ago and took your money to support that pretty boy. Ingrid slandered Nicole in hopes that Eric would help her deal with that woman. Who is she to walk all over me? Eric's eyes sank, and his face turned extremely glum. Shut up. He walked away and completely ignored his sister. The restaurant manager had already received orders from Grant Stanton beforehand to prepare a copy of the surveillance footage. As soon as Eric arrived and explained his intentions, the restaurant manager took out the surveillance footage and handed it over. 1 minute, 2 minutes. Eric's face became more gloomy by the second while Ingrid stood anxiously on the side. In the video, Ingrid and Quinn were hurling insults and curses that were harsh to hear, but Nicole looked like she was accustomed to it. Is this customary? Is this not the first time this has happened? Was this how my family treated Nicole all this while during our marriage? Nicole's calmness and retaliation shocked the two of them. So is this the first time she ever fought back? Eric's heart surged with complicated emotions. Blood rushed to his head, and his expression kept changing. Suddenly, he stopped the video and walked out with big strides. Brother, wait for me. Ingrid Ferguson, this is not the first time you attack her, right? Eric glared at his sister. Ingrid's face paled and looked horrendous as she quickly denied it. What? I was just angry that she found another man so soon after your divorce. Why would I berate her otherwise? Eric sneered. He no longer believed his arrogant and capricious little sister. Go and apologize to Nicole. I don't want to. I'd rather die than apologize to that bitch, Ingrid shouted in aggravation. Nicole was the one who poured wine all over me. So why should I apologize to her? Chapter 18. Someone you can't afford to mess with. Ingrid tugged on Eric's arm. Brother, you have to help me. Didn't Nicole take your money to support her lover? She clearly has an affair with that man. Eric shrugged Ingrid off of his arm. His tone was sullen as he coldly spat out. That man is Grant Stanton from West City. He's someone you can't afford to mess with. He began to be doubtful. Was the divorce not just my problem? Perhaps the entire Ferguson family is the problem. Ingrid was stupefied. Although she had never met Grant Stanton, every woman in the elite circle knew that he was the most eligible bachelor in West City. He was so mysterious and noble. Countless women would bend over backward just to marry this man. But Nicole was with him? She was vexed. Since her brother did not back her up, she could only turn to others for help. Ingrid immediately made a phone call. Keith, Nicole bullied me. You have to help me. At Grant Stanton's office in the Stanton Tower, Nicole watched as Grant made her a cup of coffee with skill and grace. Just then, she received a call from Dominic Young, the president of Falcon Entertainment. Nicole, I got insider information that Miss Ferguson found someone to follow you discreetly. Do you need help to solve this? Nicole pursed her lips slightly and smiled. Her gaze was indifferent. Nah, let her be. I'll just go with the flow. It'll save me some publicity fees. After she hung up, Grant frowned slightly and paused for a moment. What is it? Miss Ferguson hired someone to follow me. Let her be. Grant did not take it to heart, because these little tricks were within their control. He handed over an aromatic cup of coffee he just made for her. Careful, it's hot. Nicole smiled and took it, then closed her eyes to savor the smell. Your coffee is the best, much better than the world's top baristas. I think you'll definitely make it big if you open a cafe. Grant snorted and cast her a helpless glance. No one but you can afford to drink my coffee. Nicole tasted the coffee with great satisfaction, and suddenly remembered something. Since I'm officially starting my job tomorrow, can I ask Yvette to be my right hand and help me for a few days? Grant nodded without much thought. Whatever, just make your own arrangements. Thinking about the way Yvette looked at Grant, Nicole excitedly sent Yvette a message. Okay, you're officially starting work tomorrow. Yvette replied immediately. Yes, ma'am. Yvette was from the affluent Quimby family. When Yvette offered to help Nicole, she only planned to spend more time with Nicole and Grant. Nicole saw through her intentions, but did not expose her, because she also wanted her best friend and big brother to be together. Nicole was in a great mood, and happily left for their date. The two ladies then went to a bar they frequented. Tattle Bar was lively with raucous music. The bass and the beats made them immerse themselves in the music. Yvette was delighted to be starting work at Stanton Corporation, so she let loose and partied to her heart's content. After some drinks, they went up to the dance floor. These two ladies were incredibly beautiful with outstanding temperaments, which immediately attracted a lot of attention. One was sexy and passionate, and the other was aloof and regal. Although Yvette was starting to slur her words, she still wanted to continue drinking. Nicole was a little helpless when she saw this. She took Yvette's hand and shouted over the music, "I'm going to the bathroom, so wait for me here." Yvette just waved her hand in assurance. Nicole came back after a few minutes. Her face instantly sank when she saw a tall, burly man standing next to Yvette. The man had long noticed the two ladies dancing by themselves. When he saw that Yvette was alone, he became horny and went up to pull Yvette into his arms. He did not expect Nicole to come back so quickly and looked askance at her. Chapter 19 video. Since you're here, you don't have to leave just yet. Why don't you accompany me for a drink? The man's gaze was lecherous as he flashed a cunning smile. His tone was half threatening and half coaxing. Yvette was already tipsy. The man was holding her neck and looked like he could drag her away at any time. Nicole looked straight at the man and said calmly, "Let her go." The man hooked his lips smugly and beckoned to her. "Come here and drink this, then I'll let her go." Nicole knew without having to think that the drink must have been spiked. Even so, she did not hesitate and walked over, but an onlooker discouraged her. "Miss, don't go over first. Call the police. This guy is a notorious gang leader. Even a gangster dares to bully me now." Nicole turned to look at the other guy and said, "Thanks for your concern, but don't worry." She was fed up and laughed instead of getting angry. "If I go over, you'll release her?" "Sure. Come over then." The man smiled lewdly and thought that he had these ladies in the bag. "I'm getting lucky tonight." Nicole smirked and walked over to him confidently. When she was in front of the gangster, she raised her eyebrows. "I'm here now, so let her go. This chick is more beautiful than this drunk one." The gangster was aroused and reached out wanting to caress Nicole's face, but before he could touch her, he watched as a beer bottle landed on his head. "Ah!" he squealed like a pig. In the next second, Nicole reached out and bent his wrist downward, which made him lose all ability to retaliate. While the man was squealing, she kicked him in the chest, and the punk fell heavily to the ground. He rolled around a few times and curled up in pain as his body trembled. The gangster did not even have the strength to stand up and fight back. The music in the bar stopped abruptly, so it was unusually silent for a moment. The crowd was shocked by this scene. Some people did not even catch it before it was over, because it all happened in less than a minute. Those who intended to be heroes did not even get the opportunity to save the two beautiful women in distress. Such a burly man was crushed by this beauty in mere seconds. Having been out of practice for 3 years, Nicole was not at all rusty, and still had the basic fighting skills. She took a step back and glanced at the punk on the ground with a cold gaze. She then calmly went over to pick up the glass of spiked wine that was on the bar counter, and squatted next to him. "You want to drink this yourself, or should I help you with it?" The corners of her lips curled up in contempt. She was unfazed by the dark red blood that oozed out from his head. Under the colorful lights of the bar, her smile looked more terrifying. The man wailed in pain as he twitched and shuddered in fear. He hurriedly begged for mercy. He never imagined that he would encounter such a difficult woman. However, Nicole did not care about his pleas. She reached out and yanked his hair aggressively, forcing him to tilt his head back. Her voice was still as calm as ever. "I'll help you." After that, she poured the entire glass of wine into his mouth, that not a single drop was left. Nicole dusted her hands and stood up as she dealt with this vile man calmly, without the slightest panic, fear, or even haughtiness. The crowd was in awe. Who they thought was the weakling turned out to be the champion. Nicole went back to carry Yvette, and left the bar unperturbed. "Let's go. That guy just ruined our night." When everyone came back to their senses, the woman had already disappeared through the door. The gangster was covering his wound in pain, as he rolled around in discomfort. He looked so wretched like a wriggling worm. A few paparazzi that were there watched the whole spectacle in excitement. One of them sneaked out to make a call. "Mr. Ludwig, we took a video of Nicole hitting someone at the bar. This content will surely go viral if we post it online. Her image will be ruined." Keith Ludwig was eating some fresh air-flown caviar at that moment. He smiled smugly. Go ahead and post it then. It's only been less than a day, and Nicole already let the cat out of the bag? This ungrateful bitch left the Ferguson family and dared to bully Ingrid and betray Eric. How detestable, it's time to teach her a lesson.